David Brewster here, a new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is the late, great, legendary Duane Eddy. And I've had some requests to feature this, early guitar pioneer and early guitar hero. And Duane Eddy's career started in 1954, and unfortunately Duane passed away last year in 2024. So if you do the math there, that means his career spanned 70 years, which is unreal. And his music and legacy definitely influenced and saturated all of music. And the bands and guitarists that he directly influenced, he influenced everybody. The Ventures, the Shadows, the Beatles, the Kinks, Mark Knopfler, Brian May, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, the list goes on and on. And his influence definitely is everywhere in rock. And he was very popular in the States, and he was from the United States, but he was twice as popular in England. And, British musicians and bands just couldn't get enough of Duane Eddy's music. Definitely George Harrison, the Beatles, loved Duane Eddy big time. And the publication Enemy over in England actually had a poll one year, and Duane Eddy was ranked #1, and that means #2 was Mr. Elvis Presley. That just kind of proves how popular he was in England. And definitely this episode's long overdue, and I've been, having a blast kind of visiting some of Duane's music. So buckle up. Here we go. So just like we've done in other episodes in the Soloing Secret series, when you're checking out a certain player like Duane Eddy, it would be really wise to scope out his musical influences, which will reveal certain things that pop up in his music. And with Duane's influences, it's definitely a healthy mix of early guitar icons, Chet Atkins, Merle Travis, Les Paul, and people like that. And here's Duane Eddy's elusive musical influences right here. So as far as Duane's actual soloing secrets, the things he would typically do with a guitar in his hands, and there's a lot here: modified blues phrasing, various pentatonic scales, string bending. He definitely was fond of lower register, lower octave, melodies and riffs and licks and stuff. Wound string bending and these kind of blurry ideas. Use of effects, tremolo bar. I mean, it was a Bigsby, but it was still a bar. And just a complete pioneer of things that would be coming from rock guitarists in the future. But definitely Duane Eddy was the legend and kind of the template that a lot of guitarists used to kind of form their style and learn how to play rock guitar, from Mr. Duane Eddy. So the music and ideas in this episode actually came from 5 Duane Eddy albums. Keep in mind, during the course of his career, he released 23 studio albums, 14 compilations, 58 singles. I think 15 of those songs were top 10 hits. So definitely Eddy was very prolific. Lots of music to dig through. And I searched through his music, trying to locate very specific things. We're going to hit a bunch of twangy ideas in this lesson. The wound string bending and the growling ideas, but also more kind of traditional playing too. Blues licks and string bending and stuff like that. So if you're a Duane Eddy fan, an early rock, music fan, or just a player looking for some really interesting and new ideas, even though a lot of these ideas are 50, 60 years old and more, buckle up, because here we go. So with the opening, that was me playing through Twistin N Twangin from the album by the same name, which actually is on the wall right there. I can't believe I tracked that album down. And this is the epitome of that twangy, growling, lower position, lower octave, wound string bending kind of idea, like this. Like that, and it repeats again right there. So the low E to that F sharp to the low E right there at the beginning. And also notice I'm picking really close to the bridge, which is going to help you get that snappier, kind of brighter sound. Like that, instead of like that. We're back here. So So that open E, F sharp to E, and then we're going to grab this G sharp, and you're bending that a half step to A, and then you're going to play the open A, you know, next, like that. Right, and you're just kind of smearing that bend into A, and then you're playing that open A string. So your ear kind of hears what you're doing. You're kind of playing with your ear. Right, and then right there, go G sharp, G, and then you're going to slide F into F sharp, and then you start kind of playing with that with a slide. It's a big Duane Eddy move right there, kind of sliding, you know, a half step lower into the targeted note, you know, that F into F sharp. The exact same thing right here, B flat to B, and do it the same way. Slide into that B note, but you're kind of exaggerating it, like that. And then, you know, Johnny Cash bend right there, that F sharp up and down, low E open, and then you're playing like the top part of an E7, the open D string, and that G sharp right there, and then occasionally hit the low E. Like that, and you do it again. Something like that. Twistin N Twangin. Definitely that's a cool one. Next up's the very famous Rebel Rouser. This came from the album Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel, and that word twang is cracking me up because it appears in over, you know, dozens of Duane Eddy songs. Certain album titles have twang in the title. Twangville, the biggest twang of them all, $1 million worth of twang. Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel, of course. But Rebel Rouser, this is a good one to kind of really get a feel for those wound string bends and this lower kind of position, lower octave playing, like this. Not hard to play, but if you're not used to doing these wound string bends and lower position bending, that might feel really weird if you're used to doing all this stuff, but then you've never really explored this. And he's doing the big twangy bend right there to start it with. And then, you know, that E to G sharp, open A to that B. And then that G sharp to E, open A. And then that A to C sharp to E, and then back to that B note, and then do that big twang bend again. And there's that E, G sharp, open A to B, and then do that again. Hit that B again, and then do the big twang bend again to low E open. And then do it over again. Next up's the main part from the song Movin N Groovin. This is also from the album Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel, and it's something like this. Really not hard to play once again, and here we're doing like a top part of an F major chord. He's also grabbing that the sus4 note right there, that A sharp. I guess that might be a B flat. Anyway, and then there's three F5s right there, and then do that again. So you're literally kind of strumming the chord, and you're also changing that, you know, that A to B flat like that. That chord, do it again, and then this is really interesting. We're basically doing the twangy thing, but we're hammering on that open A into that B flat. Do the exact same thing, that E to F right there, B to C the same way, A to B flat same way, and then that E to F to finish it. basically starts all over again. So it's not hard to play, but make sure you put that attitude in there, because that's the big thing. Duane Eddy, Link Wray, Dick Dale, all these early guitar heroes, they had so much attitude and character when they played guitar. Okay, this one's for all the Cape Crusaders out there. This is Batman, and this is really cool. And there's two guitars here, and I had to kind of modify this so I could demonstrate it here on camera. Guitar 1 is standard tuning, but Guitar 2 is a baritone guitar, and I don't have a baritone guitar. So to remedy that, I just tuned my low E down to a C down here. So I'm way down there, right? A low C. And you hear Guitar 1 come in with this kind of position shift twang kind of slide thing like this. Similar to some of the stuff we've already seen in this lesson. And then you hear the very familiar kind of chromatic, you know. My guitar is very buzzy in this tuning. That low C is freaking it out. So that's Guitar 1, standard tuning, but on the, you know, detuned low E, which is tuned to C right there. So you're sliding into that 7th fret, and then you're just doing that 7, 6, 5, 6 kind of move. Right? So that's Guitar 1, and then Guitar 2 is the baritone guitar, and that's way down here. You put those together and you've got Batman, Duane Eddy style. Interesting, very different, very 60s too. Check out Batman, that rocks. Next up's the song Shazam. This is actually a non-album single, but it does appear on various compilations, and there's actually a Shazam compilation, I think, floating around out there. And this actually reveals some of Duane's like traditional or regular guitar playing. There's some pentatonic blues licks and bending and stuff. So it's not the growling, lower, you know, wound string stuff, but something like this. A series of like E minor pentatonic blues licks and like near open position there. So you hear a big slide off that B note, and then he is twanging out that low E at the beginning. So the B slide, and then like that, the low E to that A note right there. And then that's where you hear the series of different licks. The first one, so think like E minor pentatonic, E minor blues right there. The high E open, smear bend that G note, high E open, that fretted D to the open B, and then a position shift slide, that B flat to A to the open G. Right? And then do that first riff again, that twang riff. Then you've got this lick, E minor pentatonic in open position. So you're basically hammering on open D to that E note, 2 open Gs, slide this A up to B, and then grab the high E open, and then pull off that B, A to the open G. Like that. Do that opening twang riff again. And then right here, this is crammed in there. So it's coming down, you know, E minor pentatonic, the G to the high E open, that fretted D to the B open, and then a very quick, it's like a hammer-on pull-off, that A, B, A to the open G, and then come down like that E to the open D, and then end on that B note right there. And then, and you're actually doing the second fill or lick again. You know, something like that. traditional licks and phrasing right there from Duane Eddy. Next up's the song The Marauder. This came from the album Twangville, and once again we have some traditional kind of pentatonic licks from Duane Eddy, like this. Like that. It does it again. Pentatonic, grab the low E open, and you can definitely hear him do bar dips, like occasionally like dipping like a Bigsby, I believe. I don't have a bar on this guitar. I was going to grab my Strat, but I thought, no, I'll just do this. I was bending like the neck of my guitar. Be careful if you try to do that. I'll talk about that in a second. Low E open, the high E open after that, grab that D note fret at the open B. Then right here, you're going to basically slide this A into that B note, and you also want to hybrid pick and grab the high E open, like that. So you want to do the high E open and let that high E ring when you do the slide, and then you want to slide that A to B again, like that. And then come down E minor pentatonic right there, like that. Right? And then basically start it again. When you get to that open B, that's when you're going to go to part of B7 right there, a B7 chord. And that's where he kind of dips his bar. I'm actually bending the neck of my guitar very carefully, just so you kind of hear that chord kind of dip. That's basically what he did with the Bigsby. But like that, start it again. And he finishes it like that. It almost starts the same way. And then just walk down E minor pentatonic right there. And then you're going to twang bend that F sharp up and down, and then low E open, like that. Next up's a lick from the song Shindig, and this appears on the album Twangville. That's a great Duane Eddy album, by the way. And this is really cool, like this. One more time. Something like that. So we're sliding minor and major sixth for this lick. And right there at the start, he's sliding this G to G sharp and then catching that E on the D string right there, and that's a minor sixth. And then he's sliding that G sharp to A and grabbing F sharp, and that's a major sixth. So you've got that shape and this shape that we're playing with, right? Minor and major sixths. So we're starting there, and then you're going to move chromatically like that. Then we're going to go back to the minor shape right here when you move into that C sharp, that 9th fret, like that. So that's the shape we kind of started with right here after that initial slide. Right there, that minor 6, that C sharp and that A. Then we're going back to the major shape right there, that D note and that B. And then we're doing chromatic moves right there all the way up to E. Then we're going to go back to this D sharp and that B note right there to start with the minor shape. And then we're moving back into that major shape right there with that E and that C sharp. And then we're doing chromatic moves all the way up to F sharp. And then the last little shift right here is that F sharp to G sharp. Grab that E, which is the minor 6th right there, and you're going to slide that E off. Like that. So really slow, we're doing... something like that. And you can definitely kind of work out different fingerings. I think I used a different fingering right there than I did initially. So you can definitely kind of switch it up or change it depending on what's comfortable. What an interesting, cool, intervallic lick, you know, with sixths, and that's just really cool. Shindig. Okay, last but not least are some licks from Gumshoe Blues. This is also from the album Twangville, and this definitely is like just traditional, authentic blues phrasing. So no twangy, you know, wound string business. We're doing this. Something like that. So it's really interesting to kind of see and hear him play like this. So we're grabbing like a really standard blues lick right here. Kind of think of like the Albert King box, like above, you know, the A minor pentatonic, you know, box right here. Albert King's box is right there, and that's kind of what he's playing out of. But he's grabbing that like that, starting on that E note into that that G, and grabbing that A. And then you got this. So there's the first two licks right there. There's a big pause right there, and then you hear him chromatically walk up. It's going to the 4 chord, and he's doing this, you know, E, F, F sharp, and then catching that C note. And then he does that same lick that he did, like the second lick that we had a second ago. Like that. So lick 1. Big pause, and then... hold that note, then after a while you hear him slide it off finally, kind of exaggerated, and then so that E, kind of smear bend that G, grab that A, and then that G, F sharp to E pull off, and then you hear kind of a smear bend on this C to that A note on the high E, and then you're literally just coming down A minor pentatonic box and you're doing these quick little pull offs like that. Something like that. So check that out, because it's really interesting to hear him play in kind of a normal way compared to all the twangy, you know, bar dips and weird bends and all that stuff, and then hearing Duane play like a bluesy solo. It's like, whoa, that's cool. That's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with this look at Duane Eddy, and I have to admit, this episode was long overdue. I had Duane on my list. I've had Duane on my list for years. And I did hit some surf rock earlier this year. I guess that was back in February and March. And we looked at Dick Dale and surf rock and eventually the Ventures and the Shadows and some of that stuff, Hank Marvin. And I was going to put Duane in when I was hitting that stuff, but I didn't want to overdo it. And I did notice like I was posting a lot. I was really in surf mode and like early, you know, rock guitar mode. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do Duane Eddy, but I didn't. And, you know, when I saw the news that he passed last year, you know, I do remember when that hit, I think that was like April of last year of 2024. And I was like, oh man, not another legend, you know. And I know his health was kind of iffy, you know, like in recent years, and he'd, you know, kind of slowed down and stuff like that. But he was one of those artists I really wasn't keeping up with like the latest news. And then suddenly, abruptly, there was the news that he'd passed away. And I knew I needed to do this. I wanted to pay tribute to him, you know, and it's a little bit late here, but I did finally get around to, you know, really visiting a lot of his music and albums, and I'm feeling really inspired by this. It's very different. You know, nobody plays guitar like this anymore unless they're paying tribute or doing like a retro kind of thing. But really cool, you know, to kind of go back and listen to like old-timey guitar music, Chet Atkins, Les Paul and the gang, Dick Dale, of course. And with Duane Eddy, I mean, there's just tons of cool ideas, cool licks and phrasing and bending and the twang. I mean, that's really, really cool. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.